Every day, something dramatic happens in the Caribbean that affects our lives. We'll give you the details. We'll give you the facts on Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick. Here's Eddie Frederick.
So glad you can join us. Jamaica's Chief Justice urges judges to be courageous. This story takes the lead in today's edition of Caribbean Perspective for Thursday, 12th January 2023. Details when we return.
Hubbard's Multi-Department Mount Gay and Hubbard's Tire Bay, located at the Building Supplies Compound in Grand Anse, are reminding the motoring public that another round for licensing and inspection has begun. Just arrived on new shipments of quality furrowed and torque tires to fit all makes and models of vehicles at competitive pricing. Shop early to avoid the hassle of long lines. WhatsApp them on 473-405-5482. Hubbard's, quality service, affordable prices.
Welcome back. Jamaica's Chief Justice admonishes judges to display courage when doing their job. More in this TVJ News item with Andrea Chisholm.
With the government under pressure to reduce major crimes, the Chief Justice is urging judges to display courage and uphold the law when making critical decisions about people's life.
Courage to decide cases against popular sentiment. And in a high crime environment, understandably, there is an expectation that criminals, if you call them criminals, will be caught, tried, convicted, and punished severely. However, it is the criminal law that determines whether a crime has been committed. And it is a court which determines whether the person should be branded as a criminal at the end of the trial process and assuming that there is a conviction.
Brian Sykes was speaking recently during a swearing-in ceremony for judges of the Court of Appeal and Supreme Court. He also raised concerns about the use of the term violence producers. The Prime Minister and law enforcement officials have indicated that such persons are committing crimes across Jamaica and they will be targeted. But for the Chief Justice, the law must take precedence.
Violence producers, we don't know who those are. Is it defined? How do we get to these expressions? And the expectation seems to be that once a particular arm of the executive defines them as such, then that is to be accepted without question by the judiciary. Well, just to say that that has never been so and can't be so. A criminal trial is conducted according to the rules of evidence, procedure, and the determination is to find out whether the person has been convicted, is guilty of the crime with which he or she is charged.
And speaking of charges, the Chief Justice also commented on individuals deprived of their liberty. While not specifically mentioning the term pre-charge detention, he had this to say.
The law relating to the writ of habeas corpus was developed so that the legality of the detention of persons could be inquired into. And so, in a democratic society, whenever a person is deprived of his or her liberty, there are really only two choices open. The person is either released or they are charged and placed before the court. There's really no realistic third option. And even before we had a constitution, the common law itself is predicated upon individual liberty. This is why with the thought of false imprisonment, the claimant simply has to state, I was imprisoned, full stop. And thereafter, the person doing the imprisoning has to make the justification.
Over in St. Lucia, Tourism Minister Dr. Ernest Hilaire, who has been basking in the largest visitor arrival figures, is expressing disappointment with regional air travel. Dr. Hilaire says the long-standing challenges with regional travel are limiting the potential of the tourism sector.
Tourism officials are buoyed by the industry's performance in 2022, with figures easily surpassing that of 2019. But it is not all good news for the mainstay of St. Lucia's economy. Regional tourism, which is a significant segment of the tourism industry, has been sluggish.
The shortfall for us for this year remains regional travel. as it relates to international arrivals, we equate into 2019. But for regional travel, we still have major challenges. Of course, you know the situation with the regional carriers and the challenges that they face.
Regional travel has been plagued with problems seemingly forever. The situation is particularly acute this time around, with the figures down about 40% compared to that of 2019. This, to the tourism minister, is worrying.
For St. Lucia, regional travel was very significant, our second largest source market. So, as you can imagine, if it is down to about 40% of what it was in 2019, it has a major impact on our total arrival numbers. So, that's an issue for us. We've had discussions with the Prime Minister as to how he can really push his colleagues to get the regional airlift back on track. And we're certainly hoping that once we can get that done, it's going to, really assist us. And for 2023, just hoping that we can get regional airlift and for us to surpass 2019 figures.
Regional tourism is an important part of the overall tourism industry. To date, no one has come up with a workable solution for regional travel, which is vital not only for tourism, but for regional trade and integration. Stanley Lucian for the HGS News Force.
You're listening to Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick. A top brass of Heritage Petroleum Company Limited in Trinidad and Tobago, led by its chairman Michael Kwame, met with a team from the Energy Ministry, headed by Minister Stuart Young, at Heritage's corporate office in Port of Spain on Tuesday. TV6's political editor Joel Brown was there and sought some answers to some very important questions from the Energy Minister.
According to a post on Heritage Petroleum's Facebook page, accompanied by photos, the company's top leadership presented its 2022 results and 2023 plans and strategy to Energy Minister Stuart Young. Heritage is a subsidiary of state-owned Trinidad Petroleum Holdings Limited, which replaced Petrotrin as the state-owned oil company in late 2018. On Tuesday, Heritage said that in 2022, the company embarked upon an aggressive drilling and workover program with 10 wells drilled on land and 1 offshore while operating 22 rigs, and that in 2023, its focus continues on drilling another 10 wells on land and 5 wells in the Soldado field offshore. Heritage said the Energy Minister reiterated the important role that the company plays in the revenue generation for Trinidad and Tobago, as the company contributed a significant percentage of the national GDP in 2022. The company said Minister Young reminded Heritage of the need to continue producing oil as efficiently and as safely as possible and to maximize financial returns for Trinidad and Tobago's energy reserves while continuing to be a sustainable and resilient business, and also emphasized the need for nimbleness to respond to the volatile geopolitical forces in the world that impact the oil and gas industry. Minister Young mentioned that he would have been meeting with Heritage Petroleum's top executives while he spoke with the media on Monday after the closing ceremony for the 2022 Trinidad and Tobago onshore and nearshore competitive bid round, at a time when fellow CARICOM member states, Guyana and Suriname, are experiencing oil and natural gas booms.
This is onshore, so in Guyana right now, as you recognize, it's deep water, far offshore that they're finding oil. It took them decades to find it, and thankfully for them, they're having success now.
In that context, the Energy Minister was asked if the 16 bids for 8 out of 11 onshore and nearshore blocks for oil exploration that were on offer in the 2022 Trinidad and Tobago onshore and nearshore competitive bid round were in essence a show of confidence in the local oil and gas sector.
Yes, it is a show of confidence by the existing players and a couple new ones coming in, and onshore is a lot easier to produce onshore and a lot less costly. So this is what we expected. Trinidad and Tobago is a mature province. It's been over 100 years of oil exploration and production. So as you would expect, you're going to find less and less areas of oil as they begin to produce more. So I think it's quite a good success for now. Let's see how the evaluations go. hopefully we'll be able to award some exploration and production licenses.
TV6 News has sought an update from Minister Young on the government's plans to increase the local supply of natural gas, which is used as feedstock for the ammonia, methanol, urea, and other plants in Point Lisas, and for Atlantic LNG's 4 liquefied natural gas streams in Point Fortin. 2023, as you talked about at the deep water as well. Are you hoping that we can see a major increase in terms of gas production, because you have the commitments with Point Lisas, of course, the restructuring of Atlantic LNG and so on?
As you all would know or should know by now, the gas production, that's a long-term thing. So even when you negotiate and you do deals today, it takes at least a couple years to come on.
According to the latest data from the Central Bank on its website, as of September of last year, Trinidad and Tobago produced 2.844 million standard cubic feet of natural gas per day. By comparison, in September 2014, natural gas production in Trinidad and Tobago stood at 4.125 million standard cubic feet per day.
So we're having some increased production through things like Cassia, Matapal, Colibri, Barracuda with Shell, the Cassia and Matapal with BP. So you're going to have what we're hoping for and what should bring on some production this year is Touchstone are hoping to bring on another one of their onshore gas productions. They have Coho in production right now, and we're hoping for Cascadeur later on this year. So we're hoping to see an increase. But as you know, with these things, keeping it stable and keeping it steady as well, you still need an increase in production because everything is declining as you draw it out of the ground. So let's hope for a good 2023, yes.
Jewel Brown, TV6 News.
In the meantime, a former Energy Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, Kevin Ramnarine, says Trinidad and Tobago needs investment, but there is also need for an adjustment to the regulatory policies for ease of doing business. More from TV6's Nicole M. Ramani.
On Monday, the Ministry of Energy received 16 bids on 11 oil blocks offered by the government. Each bid is said to contain technical and commercial evaluation proposals, minimum expenditure obligation, and a minimum work program. However, on Tuesday, former Energy Minister Kevin Ramnarine said, while investment is welcomed, the tangible benefits are not immediate.
What the past experience has shown for land is that it takes about 7 years. And I'm saying that the government of Trinidad and Tobago and the public service could contribute greatly to reducing that by addressing this whole issue of the regulatory approvals and the permitting that is needed to get the companies out there and drilling and exploring and so on. And it's not a request for our regulatory agencies to compromise or to dilute or to water down. But really, there has to be a sense of alacrity by the regulatory agencies with the speed with which these approvals are given.
Mr. Ramnarine said the population can benefit in various ways.
If and when these companies are awarded contracts, they are going to invest, and that is going to stimulate economic activity, employment of people, and so on. Service companies, rigs would be mobilized and so on. So there's that spin-off. And then the longer-term spin-off would be revenue and taxes and royalties for the government and so on.
He also shares his view on the proposed rates increase from the Regulated Industries Commission. He believes it's about striking a balance between the viability of tea and tech, which is sliding, and the burden to the population.
I think there are avenues open to the RIC to protect, for example, people who use less than 400 kilowatt hours of electricity, which are small households, which would be people in the lower income brackets in Trinidad and Tobago. Maybe we could leave those people alone.
According to the former Energy Minister, the Trinidad and Tobago Electricity Commission has a perennial problem of its debt to the NGC for the natural gas it takes. A problem which, he says, not only affects this government, but the previous UNC administration, and before that, the Patrick Manning-led PNM.
On top of the fact that TNTEC doesn't pay the NGC for the gas, the NGC itself is subsidizing the gas. So we have a problem with the electricity sector, which, if not addressed, is going to lead to TNTEC sliding in terms of its performance.
Nicole M. Romani, TV6 News.
Hubbards is once again innovating the way you shop with its new online store, providing 24-hour shopping convenience. You can shop now for appliances, hardware, houseware, building material, and more. Free delivery island-wide. Start shopping now at hubbards.hardware.gd. Safe, convenient, reliable.
I am Eddie Frederick. This has been Caribbean Perspective, a whole new approach to highlighting developments in the Caribbean. In the meantime, please continue to log on to CaribbeanPerspective.com for more daily news and more.